Mud is a full driver's worst nightmare. Mud just gets in and wrecks so many of your components. Today we're going to go through the top 5 components that are affected by mud on your full drive and how to prevent damage. Mud is pretty much a mix of water, dirt and even some sand. So it pretty much acts as an abrasive. It's pretty much like sandpaper. Anything it gets against, it'll rub down and just wear out super quick. Water speeds up rust and corrosion. Even clean water can cause some serious damage if it gets into seals, bearings or even electrical components. Now, if you don't clean your 4B after a big day in the mud, it can really cause you some issues. Things like your brakes won't work as well, your suspension components will wear out heaps quicker, bearings wear out heaps quicker, and it could even overheat if your radiator is clogged full of mud. I do say this all the time, but I believe one of the spots that's always overlooked is underneath the bonnet here in the engine bay. As you can see, absolutely filthy under here, and I've only gone through this spot a couple of times, so you can imagine what it'd be like after a big Tassie trip or even a Cape York trip. Some of the common issues you'll come across that you can't exactly see is if your radiator gets clogged with mud and your vehicle starts overheating. You might wonder why. There's heaps of little fins in there that can get clogged with mud and the air does not flow through there. Another thing that you can't really see either is all your bearings and pulleys down there. They can get clogged with mud and start to fail or get really noisy. Things like your alternator can fail, or if you've been sitting in big bog holes winching out, you can even get water in your starter motor and stuff, and that, you know, when you get the click and it doesn't work, that's exactly what that is. The brushes have water in them. Another thing you really got to be careful about on these more modern vehicles is all the electrical stuff. There's plugs and wires running everywhere. They are normally pretty good. They've got a rubber seal around them, but over time, the seals can get brittle and you can get water in there and start to have problems. So I reckon it's actually really important after every trip that you have a good look in here and clean it thoroughly. What I like to do is get a bit of degrease or a bit of car wash and just spray it around under the engine bay. And pretty much what this does is, because you don't want to get your gurney super close to these parts, so it starts the soaking. You can gurney it from a distance, and then after that you can flush it out with the hose. That is all rinsed down, but there is one final step that I really like to do is start the vehicle, and all the sort of moving parts, the idler pulleys, the belts, the alternator and stuff, I like to flush them out while the car's running. My theory there is all the mud would have got in there while things are spinning around, so it's fine to wash them, but there's probably still a bit of grit sitting somewhere. So start the car up and flush them out while everything's moving, and then they should last for heaps longer. One last little trick I like to do in the engine bay if I know I'm going out in mud is just give it a bit of a spray, the whole engine bay with some silicone spray. In this case, I've got some tire Shaun, which is the exact same thing. All that does is allow the water to sort of bead off things and not actually soak right in, and it makes it heaps easier to clean also. Now, one thing people do is they normally park the car in the grass, wash the outside, get under the guards, and that's it. Now, that is good, but what I like to do after a big session in the mud like today is actually jack the car up, take all 4 wheels off, and clean right in all those important components. Brakes, drive lines, diffs, all that sort of stuff that you can't see or get to when the car's sitting on the ground. First up, I'm going to jack the car up and get all the wheels off. As you can see here, these disc brakes are completely clogged with mud, and what that's going to do is cause excessive wear and uneven wear. So let's go through how to properly clean your disc brakes. Just brought the Hilux into the shed and whacked it up in the hoist so we can have a little bit more of an in-depth look at the brakes. Now, if you don't maintain your calipers properly, this is what happens. Have a look at this disc rotor here. Looks perfect on this side, heaps of meat. You can see all the slots and dimples in it, perfect. Stand it up and look at this. This side is super thin, this side is nice and thick, and have a look at the wear mark here. That has cut a good 3, maybe 4 mil into the rotor. And what that means is when the caliper doesn't get maintained, the slides and pistons can seize up and one side will work and the other side won't. If you skip your maintenance like that, you're gonna be for more costly repairs. You're not gonna have to replace just brake pads and do some greasing. You're gonna need to do all that and put a new rotor on. And all you've got to do is just come in here and check that your brake pads are wearing evenly. What I mean by that is check this one has the same amount of meat as this side. That means all the moving parts in your caliper are working fine. This one is what we call a quad piston. So it's got pistons on each side that push the pads in like this onto the brake. Probably the best style of caliper for low maintenance. So what you do is you got a mate or your missus around, get them to jump in and press the brake pedal and just check that all these pistons are moving in and out. If that's all working, that's beautiful. You don't have to touch the pistons. But one thing I do like to do on this style of caliper though, if the pistons are good, is grease up these slide pins, because what they are is a slide pin and the brake pad slides along them, they can get corroded. So they've got a little clip on one side, get your pliers, pull the clip out, slide the pin out, normally a bit of corrosion and stuff on this, so you give it a quick little spray down with some brake clean, wipe all the stuff off, and then you get a bit of a brake lube here, just put a little bit on the pin and wipe it down there with your fingers, just a little dab like that. All you got to do now is pop this back in and put the clip back on, and basically what it means is it's just nice and lubed. That pad's going to slide along there nicely, and if any mud or water does get on there, it's not going to cause corrosion straight away. Now this is a single pot caliper. Obviously what this means is there isn't a piston on each side, they're on one side, and it uses these slides on the caliper to make the brake work. These are pretty simple to maintain too. I'm just going to imagine this is bolted to the car, my pads are in here. All you do is undo these slide bolts here, flip it up, and pretty much the same for maintenance too. You get this pin, you grease it up. One thing that's really important is check these boots that there's no splits or anything in. And if there is and there's a bit of dirt in there, get some brake clean that out. A little bit of lube in there, a little bit of lube in here. You don't want to put too much on because there's no hole here, so it's fixed in there. What I like to do once I've lubed it up is slide this in before I put the caliper back together and just make sure I can bottom it out and pull it back out. Sometimes if you put too much on, you'll push it in, bottom it out, and it'll get stuck because there's too much lube in there. It's holding things. So as you can see, this one bounces in and out nicely. I'll pull this out, flip the caliper back down, slide this bolt in, do it up, and it's simple as that. So that's the two main style of calipers and how to keep the maintenance up on them. And if you do this after every mud drive, you'll be thanking yourself. Your brakes will last heaps longer and you'll get even wear and great performance. It's actually super simple to do. Once you've done it a couple of times, you get it down pat, I would definitely recommend it. The experts at Bendix recommend if you're doing mainly road driving and a little bit of light off-roading, maybe some moist conditions, you should clean your brakes like this every 6 to 12 months. But if you're doing some heavy mud driving like we've done, or you're on the beach, I do it every single trip just to make sure your brakes stay in tip-top condition and your maintenance costs stay as low as they possibly can. Now we're going to take a look at drum brakes. The main problem with drum brakes is mud can get in, but it's super hard to get out. I've got a very scientific experiment here to showcase this. The trouble is there's heaps of little holes in here for mud to get in, and when it's got water around, it's super easy. And then you come out of the mud, all these little holes the mud gets in can drain out, but if I pull my drum brake off, the trouble is all the debris and grime and mud is still stuck in there. What that's going to do is cause excessive wear on my brake shoes and really affect my brake performance. And this is the exact reason why every time after you go mud driving with your drum brakes, you have to take your wheel off, take your drum off, and clean the whole setup to get all that debris out. First thing is obviously clean around the outside of it, and then you want to take the drum off. Some of these drums are loose. Make sure you get your handbrake off so you can spin it like this. Sometimes you can wiggle them off. Sometimes you need to use these holes here. So they've got a thread in them, and these are called jacking bolts. Wind them in, and what this does is pretty much just lever the drum off if it's stuck on there a little bit. Exactly what I was saying before. Look at all this mud trapped in the bottom here. Corrosion started on the inside of the drum. And look at all the mud in here. Obviously it gets in when you're in the mud hole, but there's no way for it to get out. So I'm going to spray it with a bit of cleaner and give it a gurney, but you've got to be super careful of things like the wheel cylinder. Obviously these have got rubber seals and you don't want to force high pressure water inside that. We were pretty lucky there with just a gurney and a bit of cleaner, it come up mint. But if you've done heaps of mudding and there is some grit stuck in behind, don't be afraid to get some soapy water, spray it on and get a hard bristled brush, get right in there. This one turned out pretty clean. Once you've done that, just get your blower again, dry it down. Once it's all dry, get your brake clean, just spray it on. Obviously, you don't want any contaminants on your pads and all that sort of stuff. Just give it a good, thorough clean with this. And pretty much just keep cleaning till you've got clear brake clean dripping out the bottom. That means it's all clean as it possibly can be in there. Once it's all clean and dry like that, one more thing I like to do before I reassemble is just get a bit of brake lubricant and put it on any of the pivot points in here, just to make sure all those moving parts have got a bit of lube in them and they're going to work perfect. So now I'm going to show the main difference between a drum and a disc brake setup. Now, this is our disc brake here and this is our brake caliper here. So exact same mud hole we're going into, we're going out, we'll get even the caliper go under. As you can see, it didn't catch nearly as much debris, and to clean this, it's so much easier. You just pull your wheel off, give it a hose. You don't have to pull your wheel and your drum off and get rid of all that stuff. So if you're doing a heap of off-roading, especially in wet conditions, probably one of the best things you can do for your drum brake vehicle is go to a disc brake upgrade. Obviously, this makes cleaning heaps easier, it improves your brake performance, and it can actually come in super handy if you want to carry some more weight and go for a GVM upgrade. Now, Bendix do a range of these, so heaps of different four-wheel drives, and they come with everything you need to convert from drum over to disc. They've even got a couple of options for the handbrake. You can have a normal conventional drum handbrake, or the latest kits actually have an electronic handbrake, which is super handy. Never have to adjust it ever again. Mud and water can really take its toll on your driveline as well. If you get water or mud inside your diff, what it's going to do is turn the oil in there into a milky sludge. It's going to look like a milkshake, and in turn what that will do is make your diff run heaps hotter, wear quicker, and all your gears and bearings are going to start to get pitting on them and just wear out super quick, and it's going to lead to early failure. Things like bearings and uni joints do not like mud or water either. Once a little bit gets past this rubber seal, it starts leading to things like rust, corrosion, and eventually it's just going to completely seize up. The next one is super important. This could save you some big bucks, is breathers. Now, if your vehicle does have breathers, check they're extended and they're high enough, and check they're all still connected. And if your vehicle doesn't have diff breathers, make sure you fit some before you go muddy driving, because this could save you thousands of dollars in repairs. This right here is a cram wheel out of a diff, and as you can see, this diff has obviously had water in it at some stage because there's heaps of rust and pitting starting on these gears. And that's not good, because once these things start to rust or pit, actually these gears have a hard face on them. And once the hard face starts to wear off, they can fail super easy. You start chipping teeth off and your diff is done. CV joints are also something that's super vulnerable in mud. If any water or mud gets past this CV boot here from a split in it, it's pretty much going to cause excess damage in there and early failure. This here is what's left of a wheel bearing. What's happened here is once the moisture has got in, it's actually started the rust and corrosion process. That's what all this pitting is. It started to rust and corrode away. Happening on the rollers too. This bearing didn't have much longer in it before it completely failed and your wheel fully locked up. Transmission damage can occur if water or mud enters this thing through a faulty seal or even through the top of a breather. And what this can do is cause the transmission to start slipping or jumping between gears, pretty much leading to complete failure, and that's a very expensive repair. This here is actually a drive band out of a transmission, and once water gets in your transmission, that nice red fluid turns into what looks like a strawberry milkshake. And believe it or not, that water actually reacts with the glue that sticks this friction material to the band, and it completely falls off. And obviously your transmission will start slipping, and then eventually you will lose drive completely. That's not something you want in the bush or anywhere, because fixing your transmission gets very expensive very quick. So here's a few tips on how to prevent damage from mud and water. Anything that takes grease, whether it be a uni joint like this, pump it full of grease before you go on the trip. Whether it be a wheel bearing and you've got to disassemble it, my theory there is anything that takes grease, if it is packed full of grease before the trip, there's going to be no room for water or mud to get in. Next one is checking electrical components and plugs. So you just pop your plug off like this. Most of them do have a seal in them, but when they get old, they can be brittle. Pop it off, have a look in there, check the seal is still on there and it's still working. Chuck a little bit of electrical grease in here if need be, and pop it back on. Make sure it's clipped down tight and you can't pull it off. So as you can see, mud really can take its toll on your 4B and its vital components. Now, it might seem like a lot of effort to do everything I've just done, but you'll be thanking yourself a hell of a lot if you do go to the extra mile and clean your 4B that well after a big session in the muddy. It'll stay healthier for heaps longer, your components will last heaps better, and your maintenance costs will stay down a hell of a lot. I would love to know if you guys thought I missed anything, or you got a couple of tips and tricks, things you do before you go in the mud or after you go in the mud. Chuck them in the comments below and I'll have a read. Super keen to see what you guys get up to. Anyway, that's all I've got time for today, so I'll see you next time on 4 Wheel Drive 24/7.